Further measures to contain COVID-19, including rapid testing and new rules on travel quarantine in Switzerland. We have Meane Glauser from our EBC Switzerland Bureau. Meane, how are things there?
Hi, CJ. So these past few weeks, Switzerland has observed a disturbing and constant rise in number of coronavirus cases and a higher need in hospital treatment for people infected by the virus. Currently, Switzerland has 192,376 confirmed cases and 2,275 deaths. That's 10,073 cases and 73 deaths more in the past 24 hours. Knowing that the measures taken last October 18 weren't enough to curb the spread of the coronavirus, the Federal Council held another meeting last October 28 and agreed on establishing much more strict measures to fight against the epidemic and to prevent intensive care units and healthcare staff in hospitals from getting overloaded. Their main purpose is to minimize the level of contact between people. First measure taken was to close discos and nightclubs. It is not allowed to more than 4 people to sit at a table in restaurants and bars unless they are families with children. All bars and restaurants have a curfew from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Additional to all of this, markets and fairs in enclosed spaces are no longer allowed. Second measure taken was to ban events with more than 50 people. This applies to religious, sporting, cultural, and other events. The only exceptions are parliamentary and communal assemblies, and it's still possible to hold political demonstrations and collect signatures for referendums and initiatives with the usual condition of always wearing masks. Given the fact that one of the main causes of new infections are private gatherings with families and friends, this will be limited to up to 10 people. Another measure implemented is no more recreational sporting or cultural activities with more than 15 people. They are only allowed indoors if there is sufficient distance and if people wear masks. This means recreational contact sports are banned everywhere. For physical activities outdoors, such as jogging, they are only allowed if the social distancing is maintained. However, all the previous rules are not applied to children under the age of 16, including those in compulsory schools. When it comes to professional sporting and cultural activities, they are as well free from the previous measure. When it comes to choirs, all performances by amateur choir are prohibited, whereas professional ones are still allowed to practice. A measure was also taken on the educational level. They decided that from Monday, November 2, the higher education institutions will once again switch to distance learning, but at the compulsory school level and at upper secondary school, classroom teaching is still allowed. The mandatory wearing of masks has been once more extended. Now they have to be worn as well outside establishments and facilities such as outdoor areas of shops and at event venues, on terraces of restaurants and bars, and at outdoors markets. They became also mandatory in busy pedestrian zones like shopping streets in town centers or any public places where the required distancing can be maintained. But that's not all. We must wear them in schools from upper secondary level upwards and in the workplaces, except if the distance is respected. The only individual exempted from the mandatory wearing of masks are children under the age of 12, people who are unable to wear masks for medical reasons, and seated guests in restaurants and bars. Besides measures, Switzerland decided from November 2 to introduce rapid antigen testing in addition to the already used PCR test. This will indeed help in widespread testing and therefore efficiently identify more positive cases within the population and isolate them rapidly. However, this rapid test will only be used for those that are not classed as being at high risk. This is because rapid testing are less sensitive than PCR tests. New rules have as well been applied on travel quarantine since October 29, and this even for business travelers. The Federal Council adopted the threshold for countries and areas to be added to the quarantine. Given that the incidence rates in Switzerland are now above average compared with the rest of Europe, the threshold has been raised, and only countries and areas having an incidence rate higher than 60 will now be enlisted in the quarantine list. Back to you, CJ.
Thank you so much, Meane. Very, very quickly, what's the reaction of people to the new measures?
Well, most of them were quite disappointed because they have to be more careful, but that's what it is, because people are losing their attention on what's happening around them. So the government has to take further measures to keep everybody safer.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much, Meane. We really hope that everyone complies with the new measures. Please do stay safe out there, and we're looking forward to more stories from you.
Yes, thank you for having me, CJ, and stay safe also. I'm Meane Glauser reporting from the Geneva, Switzerland Bureau, and we live in interesting times.